They called it a family meeting. Just those words made my skin prickle. We'd never had one before, not even when Mom died. But suddenly, Sarah and Ben decided it was time to formalize responsibilities, as if I hadn't been the one taking Dad to every appointment, ordering his meds, dealing with insurance while they sent check-ins from beach resorts. The Zoom call started with forced smiles. Ben opened with, "This isn't personal, Em." And Sarah chimed in like clockwork. "We just think you're too emotionally involved to make objective decisions." Then came the line I won't forget. "Let's take a vote. Majority rules." Just like that, 2 siblings outvoted 1 daughter. And the meeting ended. They closed the laptop, satisfied. What they didn't know was, Dad had already cast his vote. Months ago. A vote he made not with words, but with trust. Real trust. Signed, sealed, notarized. He left me everything. Not because I asked, not because I fought, because I showed up. So I didn't fight back that day. I let them believe they'd won. Because some things don't need to be said, they need to be revealed. They voted me out. But Dad never did. This is the story of what happened next. The next morning, I found the envelope again, tucked in the back of my filing cabinet, behind old tax records and expired warranties. Cream-colored, heavy. Dad's handwriting on the front. Strong. Even in the months his hands had begun to shake, I hadn't opened it since the day he gave it to me. "You hang on to this," he'd said, looking me straight in the eye. "If they ever try anything, don't argue. Just show them this." At the time, I thought he was being dramatic. Now? I realized he'd seen it coming long before I did. Inside the envelope, a notarized, durable power of attorney updated trust documents, a letter in Dad's handwriting. One I couldn't bring myself to read yet. I sat at the kitchen table, coffee going cold. The same siblings who called me too sensitive were trying to take control of everything. The finances, the house, even his medical care. After years of doing nothing. And somehow, even after death started knocking at his door, Dad still made sure I had the final say. Not because I was the loudest, not because I demanded it, but because I was there. That's when I knew. I wasn't just going to hold on to these papers. I was going to use them. They voted, but I held the only signature that mattered. I didn't use the papers, not right away. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight, that maybe Sarah and Ben meant well, that they were just scared like I was. Maybe they were finally stepping up, just a little late. I even typed out a reply to their email. "I'm happy to step aside if it's what's best for Dad." Then I stared at the blinking cursor for nearly 10 minutes. My hands hovered over the keyboard, heart pounding in my ears. Because deep down, I knew the truth. They weren't doing this for him. They were doing it for control, for optics, for inheritance. And me? I was tired. Tired of being the responsible one. Tired of showing up while they disappeared. Tired of carrying the emotional weight of this family, only to be told I was too involved. Still, I didn't want to be the one who lit the match. So, I waited. I let the next meeting happen without me. No reply, no protest. Sarah texted, "I'm glad you finally see what's best." I nearly threw my phone. That night, I sat with Dad as he slept, his hand cold in mine, and I whispered, "I'm trying, Dad, but I don't want to become like them." Silence can look like surrender, but sometimes it's just the moment. Before the storm. His name was Lawson, Harold Lawson, the family's lawyer for as long as I could remember. Sharp mind, soft eyes, and a voice like gravel and honey. He was the one Dad always trusted, the one who handled Mom's will, the one who showed up when no one else did. I hadn't spoken to him in months, but when I walked into his office that Friday morning, he didn't act surprised. "Emily," he said, rising slowly from his chair. "I was wondering when you'd come." He didn't ask why I was there. Just pulled out a manila folder from his drawer like he'd been keeping it warm. "Your father left this with me, said you'd know when it was time." Inside were copies of everything. Trust documents, health directives, legal authority, all pointing to me. Not shared, not contingent, sole authority. I flipped through in silence, throat tight. There was one more thing. A sealed handwritten note with just one line on the front. Don't let them spin the story. Mr. Lawson looked me dead in the eye. Emily, your father wasn't confused. He knew exactly what he was doing. You were the one here. You were the one he trusted. I didn't cry. Not then. But something shifted in my spine. Like standing up straighter wasn't a choice anymore. It was a duty. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the loudest. But I was the one who stayed. The next meeting wasn't on Zoom. This time they wanted to meet like adults, in person, at the house. Dad's house. When I pulled into the driveway, Sarah's SUV was already there, parked slightly crooked like always. Ben's sports car too, polished to the point of arrogance. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the wheel, the envelope resting on the passenger seat like a sleeping weapon. I didn't feel brave. I felt calm. The kind of calm that only comes after you've already decided what you're willing to lose. Inside, they were gathered around the dining table, the one Dad built himself the year I turned 10. They barely looked up when I walked in. Glad you could finally make it, Sarah said, tone-clipped. Ben added, we're ready to finalize everything. I said nothing, just placed the envelope on the table, firm, deliberate, didn't open it, didn't push it toward them, just let it exist. Sarah frowned. Ben smirked. You really think waving some papers around will change what we decided? I looked at them both, then finally spoke. You had a vote, so did he. That's all. No yelling, no pleading. Just a quiet line, and the envelope they didn't know would unravel everything. You wanted a meeting. I brought the truth. Sarah snatched the envelope before I could blink. Is this a threat, Emily? No, I said. It's protection. Ben flipped through the pages, scoffing as he scanned each line. This isn't valid. He wasn't well. You know that. But the notary stamps were real. The dates, unmistakable. All signed before Dad's health declined. Sarah's voice sharpened. You manipulated him. Took advantage. That's why he didn't tell us. I didn't reply. I just opened my phone and played the first voicemail. Hey, sweetheart. Just wanted you to know I signed the papers today. Hope that brings you some peace. Ben stood up, pacing. Sarah looked shaken. But their pride wouldn't let them back down. That week, the pushback began. Sarah emailed the hospital, demanding they revoke my access. Ben called our dad's financial advisor, claiming I was acting erratically. They started digging through the past, trying to find anything to discredit me, even old therapy bills and prescriptions. And still, I stayed quiet. Because I had someone in my corner. Mr. Lawson reached out to the trust officer. He preemptively submitted every document before they could interfere. Even sent an affidavit affirming Dad's mental clarity at the time of signing. You're not alone in this, Emily, he told me. They're louder. That doesn't mean they're stronger. But the real test came 2 days later, when I showed up to Dad's bedside and found Ben already there. He was sitting in the chair I always used, smiling softly, holding Dad's hand. We're all good now, he said. We decided to move him to a private facility, more exclusive. I stood frozen. He wasn't asking me. He was telling me. Enemies don't always scream. Sometimes they smile while stealing. I didn't argue with Ben in that moment. I simply nodded, kissed Dad on the forehead, and walked out of the room like the air hadn't just been knocked out of me. But that night, I opened the sealed letter. The one Dad left in Mr. Lawson's folder. The one I hadn't dared to read. His handwriting had grown shaky, but the words were clear. If they ever try to cut you out, remember, I saw everything. You don't need to fight them. You just need to show up with the truth. That'll be enough. I read it twice, then a third time. By the fourth, my hands had stopped shaking. The next morning, I ironed my best black blouse, the one Mom used. To say made me look too serious. Good. Serious was exactly what I needed to be. I printed out 3 sets of everything. Power of attorney trust, assignment, voice, transcripts. Photos of appointments, receipts, medication logs with timestamps. I called Mr. Lawson and asked if he'd attend the meeting. He didn't even hesitate. "I'll be there," he said. "Let them talk first." That was the plan. Let them gloat. Let them feel powerful. And then, let the room go silent. You don't win family battles by yelling louder. You win them by walking in prepared. The conference room at the bank was colder than I remembered. Neutral walls, a long table, too much glass, too many eyes. Ben wore his designer blazer like armor. Sarah had a stack of papers she'd prepared, financial projections, care schedules, PowerPoints she never intended to let me see. They looked calm, confident. The trust officer entered. Then Mr. Lawson. Ben's face barely moved, but Sarah's jaw tightened. "What's he doing here?" "He's here on behalf of my father," I said. "As am I." We all sat. Sarah launched first, listing the concerns she and Ben had about my mental stability, citing personal therapy sessions from a decade ago. Ben added comments about how unreliable I'd been growing up, how I once forgot to pick up a prescription. I didn't respond. I waited until they'd said everything. Let them talk. Let them twist it. Then I pulled out one manila folder. Quietly, neatly. "This is Dad's voice," I said. "Not mine, not yours, his." Inside, signed and notarized documents naming me sole trustee and medical proxy, a full breakdown of his directives, an audio file queued on my phone. I tapped play. "Emily, if you're hearing this, it means they tried to take over. But I trust you. Only you." I wrote it down. "They can fight all they want. They won't change what's true." Silence. The trust officer cleared his throat. "These documents are clear, binding, and witnessed. Unless there's legal challenge through the court, the trustee and POA stand. With Ms. Carter." Ben opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "Mr. No." Lawson folded his hands. "Your father made this decision 6 months before his health declined. He was fully competent. I was there." Sarah stood, papers crumpling in her grip. "This is manipulation." I met her eyes for the first time that day. "No. This is what happens when someone shows up and someone else doesn't." She didn't reply. The trust officer ended the meeting. It was done, and as I walked out, I didn't look back. They voted in private. I answered in public. Not with rage, not with revenge, just with the truth. I didn't celebrate. There were no fireworks, no dramatic exits, just the soft click of the bank door closing behind me and the faint hum of traffic as I stepped into the afternoon sun. My hands were still steady. That surprised me. Inside my bag were the original documents, the ones Dad had signed months before they tried to erase me. The truth, quiet, heavy, permanent. As I reached the parking lot, I heard footsteps behind me. Sarah. "You think this makes you better?" she hissed. "No," I said. "It just means I showed up." She didn't respond. Maybe there was nothing left to say. At home, I placed everything back into the lockbox, labeled it, filed it, then sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where I first opened Dad's envelope weeks ago. I thought I'd feel relief, or triumph, but all I felt was clarity. Dad didn't give me power out of favoritism. He gave it to me because I never needed to be the center of attention. I never needed to be seen. I just needed to be trusted. They tried to speak over me, but I had the one voice that mattered, not mine. His. The next few weeks passed in paperwork, silence, and glances that no longer tried to hide their resentment. Ben and Sarah didn't speak to me again, not directly. Instead, I heard from their lawyer. They wanted to contest the trust, claim Dad wasn't of sound mind, that I influenced him in his final months. Mr. Lawson handled it, efficiently, without fanfare. He submitted the signed medical evaluations, the recorded logs, the time-stamped audio files. He even included Dad's weekly journal entries, sharp, dated, and unmistakably lucid. "They're not filing because they think they can win," Mr. Lawson said. "They're filing because losing is easier than admitting they lost." Meanwhile, I kept my promise. I finalized the estate plan, ensured Dad's medical wishes were honored, paid the final round of bills he'd left behind. Even arranged for his veterans' benefits to be quietly donated, just like he asked. When the official letter came, confirming that the trust was now closed and irrevocable, I didn't cry. I just placed it in the box. The same one where I kept everything else. And I whispered, "It's done." But I knew something had shifted. Not just the documents, not the roles. Me. I wasn't the quiet daughter in the background anymore. I was the one who carried the weight and never dropped. They tried to drag me into court. I stood where my father left me, steady. The morning Dad passed, the house was quiet. No monitor beeps, no whispered nurse updates. Just sunlight slipping through the curtains and the scent of the lemon oil I used to clean his nightstand the night before. He was gone, his hand still warm, as if he had waited for the light. I sat beside him for an hour. No tears. Just presence. There was no call to make to Sarah or Ben. They'd made their choice weeks ago. To separate, to suspect, to slander. And maybe that used to hurt. Maybe I used to crave their approval, their acknowledgement. But now I understood. Didn't need them to see me. Because Dad already had. At the funeral, I didn't give a speech. I didn't read the letter or talk about the documents or defend myself. I simply placed a photo on the casket, the last one we ever took together. Just him and me, porch steps, hot coffee, a quiet smile. People asked where my siblings were. I shrugged. Sometimes absence speaks louder than eulogies. After the service, I walked home. Alone, no escort, no entourage, no chaos. Just me. And silence. But for the first time, the silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like peace. They called me invisible. But the person who mattered never stopped seeing me. And now, I see myself too. I still live in the house, not because of ownership, not because the paperwork says it's mine, but because it holds echoes, quiet ones. The creak of Dad's chair. The hum of the porch light he never fixed. The scent of his cologne in the hallway that somehow refuses to fade. I planted marigolds this spring. He used to say they were stubborn flowers. Tough. Sun-hungry. Like me, I suppose. Sarah and Ben never called again. No apology. No closure. But here's the truth no one wants to say out loud. Sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's knowing. Knowing you stayed true. Knowing you didn't raise your voice just to be heard. Knowing that silence, when it comes from strength, is its own kind of thunder. I don't carry bitterness. I carry the letter he left me. The voice message I still keep saved. The memory of a man who, in his final years, made one last clear decision. You're the one I trust. So no, I didn't win a battle. There was no winner. There was only a daughter who showed up. And a father who noticed. They buried me in silence. But I walked out with the truth. Have you ever been cut out by people who once called you family? Drop a comment below. Your story might help someone else feel seen. Subscribe for more powerful true stories every week.